You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, check out chrisblair.com. Hey friends, this is Chris Blair with another episode of Stories Behind the Songs, and I am so excited about this week's episode. I know, I say that every single week. It's true, because I get excited every week. Every week that I get to sit down and have these conversations, I just love them. This week is no different. I'm sitting down with Victoria Shaw. I have had the honor and privilege of knowing and calling her a friend for probably over 15 years now, or something like that. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about her musical journey from New York to California to Nashville, how she was at country radio seminar and met a guy called Garth Brooks. And from that, she went on to write The River. Love that song. I actually sang that song at my high school graduation in Herculaneum, Missouri in 1993. So shout out to all my high school friends out there listening. Now, full circle, this is such a cool conversation that I get to sit down with Vic. You're going to hear the story behind that song, The River, and more. You're going to hear what she thinks about songs that are on the radio right now. She is such an incredible writer and producer. She's got other great hits like I Love the Way You Love Me that she wrote for John Michael Montgomery, songs for Lady A, Doug Stone, Ricky Martin. Like, her discography is just so huge and impressive. She also has won an ACM award for Song of the Year, 2 Daytime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Original Song, 4 Emmy nominations, and several ASCAP and CSAC awards. I love her so much. She's such an awesome person. This is such a fun conversation. Let's get to it. Here is Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair and Victoria Shaw. Hey everybody, this is Chris Blair with another episode of Stories Behind the Songs, and I am so grateful to be joined today by my dear friend, the beautiful and so talented Victoria Shaw.
I'm so happy to be here.
Oh man, this is I was so excited for this one.
It's like old friends chatting. You know,
I know, yeah.
When you asked me to do it, it was like a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I know you don't do a lot of this anymore, and it's just an honor to have you here.
I'm always happy to hang out with friends.
Yes. Well, for everybody listening, let's kind of just go back to the beginning. You're from New York, and then LA, and then to Nashville.
Yes. The first 2 country music meccas, right?
Yes.
LA and New York.
Yeah. So let's just go back to kind of the beginning. I always like to start there. How you got into music into the first place.
Well, both my parents had been in music, mostly before I was born, but music was in my house. My dad was a singer, and had been on Broadway briefly, and my mom was a singer, so there was lots of music in my house. By the time I was 3, they both had gotten out of the business, but my mom did, all those TV shows, in the 50s and 60s and stuff like that. So music was really part of the house. Sports was too with my dad, but that wasn't where I bonded with him. I did it more music. My sister bonded with the sports. But my mom taught me how to do harmony early on. We used to sing a lot in the car. So music was literally just part of my blood.
Yeah. So when did you figure out that you had the talent to write?
Oh, to write. Well, I'll tell you, when I first started writing was when I was like 11 or 12.
Okay.
And I wrote my first couple of songs, and they were and looking back now, as a professional, they were, well crafted. I understood, short verses, and I understood a chorus. I mean, they weren't just, horrific. And my dad liked it, and I got a bunch of my sister's friends together to just record it at the house. And my sister's friends were a little bit older, and they played instruments. I played piano, and all of a sudden, that seemed the right thing to do, and we started a band. I mean, I literally was in music since I was 12, and we started a band and played all over Southern California, and I've been working and doing music ever since, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then, so when did you move to Nashville?
I started coming down here in the 80s.
Okay.
I didn't move here till like 92.
Okay.
But I started coming down here when country was not cool.
Yeah.
And I moved back to New York. I grew up in LA. It's so crazy. Born in New York, grew up in LA, and at 18, just decided to move to New York. And it always kind of intrigued me, that city. And then in New York, I discovered country music, which is really
Yeah.
bizarre and not
Yeah.
the normal way. But back then, country music was also played on pop. Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton and the Barbara Mandrell Show, and just there was not this separation of state.
Yeah.
And so as I started listening to it, I was like, oh, I know that song, and I know that song. And I had started writing in New York. I played in the piano bars, and one night I came home, and I had written this song on the Long Island Railroad, which is also known as the LIRR. And I wrote this song, I'm in a smoke-filled car on the LIRR, home seems so far away. It's been a long night, I'm still a little tight, whatever made me want to stray. Anyway, all this stuff. And I wrote it, and it came out country. And then I just started listening to country more. I know that sounds, funny, but it's also because I only had this one little Casio at home, that one-note Casio that's now
exactly.
you can get on eBay. And so the only thing I could do when I got home to write music to the words I had written was dun 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 dun. So it just came out country.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So that kind of starts the path of going down, and then you're writing country. What I really love doing is just peeling back and let's just pretend that I don't know any of these stories because we've
Yes.
you've shared a lot
Yes.
with me and we've been friends for years and
Yes.
years. So, but I want to start peeling back some of these incredible hits that you've written over the years.
Thank you.
And
Well, to that, let me just peel back one little layer here.
Yeah.
This song that I'd written about being in the smoke-filled car, it was called "Is That Any Way to Treat a Star?" And it was about playing in piano bars. And I think somebody just fell. Anyway, I wrote it and sent it to my dad, and my dad was always like inventing things, or an entrepreneur. I mean, he was just trying things. We didn't, grow up with any money, but he was always inventing things, and or taking risks. And he said, "Why don't we cut this song?" He loved it, so he found these musicians out in L.A. who ended up, I didn't know at the time, being really great. Ended up moving to Nashville, being high-end musicians, but at the time they were just working musicians. We cut this song. I had this 45. I went back to New York and went over to the local radio station, which was a country station. I didn't know it was the biggest station in the country, but it was New York, and gave it to them. And bizarrely, they started playing it because it mentioned New York. Because of that, I started taking trips down to Nashville, and somebody would take me around to publishers so I could maybe find songs to sing. And during that time, a man named Charlie Monk, who was a publisher who just passed, he listened to my songs and he goes, "You wrote this?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, if you ever want to come back here and try writing, I'll set you up with some writers." And that changed my life. And I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Actually, the big epiphany was coming down here for that stuff, and somebody said, "You should go to a place called the Bluebird Cafe. They have a thing called a writer's night." Okay, I went by myself and had a religious experience.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's how I'm going to get a record deal. I'm going to buckle down, and I'm going to write hit songs for other people, and then I'm going to get noticed. It was a totally naive idea. It took me 8 years after that decision, but it was the best thing I ever did because it made me a hit songwriter.
Yeah.
Was
the Bluebird where you met Garth, or did you meet Garth through demos and?
No, I met Garth at the Country Radio Seminar.
Okay.
Which is a thing that happens in Nashville where all the radio people in country music descend upon it for 3 days, and it's a convention. And this used to be held at the Opryland Hotel. And I kind of knew his managers at the time. And they said, "You should meet our artist and maybe you can write with him." So I walked up to him and I said, Bob and Pam think that we should meet. And we just exchanged numbers there, and then we started to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he didn't have a deal or anything then.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I love hearing these stories. So, let's go to that room. Talk about the river.
Well, that wasn't the first song we wrote, but it was probably third or fourth, maybe. And he came over. I was still living in New York, but I was renting. I was paying part of a rent in a house in East Nashville with my friend Jess Leary, who became a hit songwriter as well. But it was so cheap to just pay whatever it was, $200 a month or $150 a month to keep my room in that house, as opposed to living at the Shoney's Hotel, which I used to do. So I used to drive back and forth. And one of those times, Garth came over to write, and we're sitting in the living room. And remember, he didn't have a deal yet or
Yeah.
anything. And we were blank. Sometimes that happens. You kind of
Yep.
try ideas, nothing happens. You know, an hour goes by, an hour and a half goes by, and finally he said, "Let's just not write for a second. Just play something. What are you listening to these days?" And I said, "Oh, I have this new. I'm loving the new James Taylor album. That's why I'm here." And he goes, "Okay, just play it." So because you're a songwriter, sometimes you can hear a song, but it completely makes you have an idea of a different kind of song. It just frees your mind and it takes you places. So we're starting to listen to this James Taylor CD, and all of a sudden he goes, "Turn it off, I got it." And he picked up the guitar and he started to sing, the words and music to the first few lines of The River. It was wild. And then I was like, "Oh, okay." And that song, after 2 hours of staring at each other, came out in about 2 hours,
Wow.
which was amazing. And I tell this story on stage, and you've heard me say this, but when it was over, I always remember him sitting on the floor and me sitting on the couch, and we're playing it over and over and over again on the boombox. And he said, "Can't you just imagine a stadium full of people waving their lighters and singing this song?" And in my head, I'm like, this guy is so delusional. Nobody does that in country music. Nobody plays arenas.
Yeah.
Nobody plays arenas. And then, a few years later, I opened for him in Central Park.
Yeah, that's where my head was going. It's like that.
Exactly. And afterwards, there are a million people waving their lighters and singing that song.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, as big as he was then, the stories I've heard of like how he was at the hotel room, like, I hope people show up.
I
Like,
know.
will the park be like empty? It's
I
just
know.
like, and then helicopters flying over, like.
Right. He's delusional with that stuff.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if you know this. 1993, graduation of my high school. I sang The River.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah. I was the entertainment, I guess, for my high school graduation, and sang that song.
That makes me, excuse me, so complimented and makes me feel so old. No, but that's really lovely. I love that. Obviously I work with Lady Antebellum, and one of the first things Dave ever said to me was, I learned, that was the first song I ever learned on guitar.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, those are very touching compliments. I take them to heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Lady A too.
Okay.
And we can, let's just have fun. We'll go wherever you want to go. So this is just
Okay. Well, we're
that's
bouncing forward.
I
That's
know,
fine.
yeah. And we can, we can do that, or let's just maybe just walk through the progression of like what kind of happened after going back to that time, like when The River was taken off and early stages of all that.
So 8 years of me going back and forth between New York and Nashville trying to get a publishing deal. And then during that time, wrote that song with Garth. And right around that time, like a year later maybe, I got finally a publishing deal. And a publishing deal, as people might not know, it's like you write for a company that tries to rent your songs out. That's how I explain it.
Yeah.
So that same year, the first year I wrote, nothing happened. And that second year, Garth ended up cutting The River. I wrote a song with Gary Burr called Too Busy Being in Love. That was recorded by Doug Stone. And a song that I wrote with Chuck Cannon called I Love the Way You Love Me.
John Michael
Montgomery.
Love that song.
All three came out in 1 year. And all three went to number one. I literally had 8 years of nothing happening. I couldn't get arrested. And then three number ones in a year. And that obviously launched my career.
Yeah,
People kind of noticed, so that
Yeah.
was amazing. I had other cuts, another number one with Garth, She's Every Woman,
Yeah.
after that, the top 10, whatever, with Tanya Tucker, and duet with Garth and Trisha called Where Your Road Leads. And then during a little bit later, I also had a pop hit with Ricky Martin and Christina
Yeah.
Aguilera called Nobody Wants to Be Lonely. And I Love the Way You Love Me became a pop hit around the
Yeah.
world with a group called Boyzone. So it just kept going and going. But then all of a sudden things started getting different here. I couldn't get many cuts. And I was like, what is happening? I know I'm writing the same. Why can't I get many cuts? And I started looking at the credits on their albums, and it turns out that producers were using a lot of their writers who wrote for them, their songs. It kind of sucked. And do I think it's a bummer that we all went that way? Yes, but that doesn't mean great songs weren't being written.
Yeah.
But what it did mean was that I was having a much harder time getting my songs onto albums. So I had two choices. to leave the business or to figure out, if you're not going to let me in that reindeer game, I'm going to find my own reindeer. And that's when I decided to find. I was actually looking for one artist, a male artist, because I had so many hits with guys. But funny enough, I came across Hillary Scott, who I was friends with her mom, and her mom Linda Davis had invited me to a Christmas show that her family was doing, and Hillary came out, who I hadn't seen in years, and she just had that magic it factor, and that's when I thought, ooh, I want to work with her.
Yeah.
She was still in high school, but I just knew she had the thing.
Yeah.
I know I talk a lot. I'm so
No,
sorry.
I love it. Yeah.
And then eventually, a couple of years into it, she met Dave and Charles, and I guess I made my arms big or whatever, and they just kind of camped out at my office as well, and we just started to work on writing, and I guess I was a mentor to them, and really just stuck with them. I believed in them 100%. And about 5 years later, when this whole thing started, we just kind of made a showcase. We didn't, like showcases in Nashville, usually you pay a lot of money and you get a publicist and you get this. They were just playing at Third and Lindsley every month or something. So we just did it on that, or every week on Tuesday, whatever it was. We just did it on a normal night. I called everybody I knew, important in the business. They showed up, and the next day they had like 5 deal offers on the table. And I got to co-produce their first album, which won the CMA Award. So that was fun.
And you've gotten several awards now. You've got some Emmys, you've got the ACM, you've got the ASCAP. I mean, just like from New York to LA to 8 years struggling in the business to 3 number ones in 1 year. And then like, how was that? Like the first, walk me through the first award you got and that feeling of like, oh my gosh, this is like.
The first award was the Academy of Country Music Award for I Love the Way You Love Me. I was just talking to my daughter about this because that was up against Chattahoochee. So there was no way in my mind I thought that we were going to win. I was just so excited to be nominated and at this award show and dressing up. I mean, there wasn't even a slight chance in my head we were going to beat Chattahoochee. And I remember Kathy Mattea was the one that was presenting that award. And she looked at me before the commercial, came back, and she gave me a look like, it's going to be you, and I looked at her and I shook my head. I thought, oh, she's going to be so embarrassed when she reads Chattahoochee, she's going to feel bad for me, but it's okay. I was, she just kept saying you. And then they said, I love the way you love me. And it blew my mind. And that was an amazing moment. It was really fun. You know, it's fun.
Yeah.
If anybody gets a chance to win an ACM, they should do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I recommend it.
Yeah. I love it.
This episode is brought to you by Brit Skin Beauty. Located in the beautiful Indulgence Medi Spa in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, Brittany is the go-to esthetician for facials, dermaplaning, microdermabrasion, waxing, lashes, and any skincare products and consultations. So many people in the music industry use her frequently, and her work speaks for itself. To schedule your next consultation or make an appointment, visit britskinbeauty.com or send an email to britskinbeauty@gmail.com.
So, when did you kind of start to move more into mentoring? Because you do a lot of that. I mean, it sounds like you were doing that early on, obviously with Lady A, but like you're still doing that with Cooper, and like, that's one of the things I love about you is you've got all this success, and you're best friends with some of the biggest people in the industry, but you still have the heart and you take the time out to develop new writers, and you write with new writers and all of that, and it's just
thank
amazing.
you. I appreciate that. I think I can't take all the credit for being so loving. Some of it is like, I think they're going to make me money. I'm going to bet on them.
Yeah.
But you do, it does take you out of your norm of writing with somebody who you're going to have success with to take that gamble. But I mean, otherwise I think I would be stale, and I would stay with as a 90s writer, I mean? I wouldn't have progressed because when you're writing with young, fresh writers, they bring so much to the table. I might bring a sense of how to truly nail it to that hit song way, but they'll bring something refreshing and something I haven't thought of, a chord or a way to say something. And that's what I love about writing with Cooper Allen. I really, he has grown into such a strong writer, and his instincts are great. And when he came to town, and I started to work with him, he had a sense of song, but he is a great songwriter now. And so, and honestly, I got into the mentoring because I couldn't get cuts. So I just tried to find young people that I believed in. And in my head, that stuff takes 5 years. Like, if you don't have the patience.
Yeah.
And I know I've had so many friends who just gave up like in a year. Well, how do you, I don't know. I think publishing companies take 5 years to truly get off the ground. And I think acts sometimes take about 5 years. And you have to know that you're not going to be making money for a long time. But if I believe in something, I'm all the way in. And also, I think when you give yourself to somebody to mentor, you have to put your ego away. It's all about them. What benefits them? How can I make them better? How can I make them famous? It's not about you. And maybe it's the mother in me. I find that very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worked well. I mean, I've watched Cooper. I mean, just he's developed so much.
He has.
It's
But you also have to it's not just me with my magic wand. You have to have the talent, obviously,
Exactly.
but you
Yes.
have to have the smarts and the drive and the work ethic. Work with a lot of people. Some just didn't make it because it just didn't happen, for whatever reason.
Right.
But some didn't make it, Scott Borchetta once said something to me that I always quote, because he said, I've never been wrong about talent, but I have been wrong about work ethic. And you don't know until you get in bed with somebody.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you know that they don't have a good work ethic? And that's happened to me a few times. And if I'm working harder than the person I'm trying to help, they got to go.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not going to work. And it's self-sabotaging for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's, one of the things that I love about the listening room is we get to see so much great talent before anybody else
Absolutely.
does. But I have seen that on both sides of it, right? Like I've seen the talent and they put in the grind and, they're accepting awards on the ACMs now. But I've also seen people that have walked across this stage that are just so good and unique and they could do it. But then they figure out that 200 days a year in a van,
they don't want to do it.
Early morning radio shows and not making any money, and they leave town.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh.
But you know what? That's probably best, because that means they didn't have the stamina. It's a very stupid business. You have to be willing not to make any money for the longest time. And we do that because I don't think it's because we're cocky. I think it's because we're stupid. We're too stupid to stop.
Yeah.
Literally. I think those people who go off and go, that's it, I'm going back to school. God bless them. Because
Yeah.
we have this disease that says do or die. Build like you. I mean, build a successful business or nothing. I'm not, you have built this business up. It's been unbelievable. As a songwriter, your passion and your love to give a venue, and a place for people to play. I remember the first little bar that you had. I
Yeah.
went to that bar.
Yeah.
And then the second one. Was there a third one before this one?
Yeah, third one, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of the same story as songwriting. It's like you're not leaving and you're still standing,
Yeah.
It's what you've created is beyond just a brand. It's like a church, I want to say. It's like a songwriting church.
Thank you. That
It's
means
true.
a lot.
It's the truth.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And it could only be such a good venue if it was because it's owned by a songwriter, because you understand what they might like, what the sound system should be. There's a huge difference in just a music lover and then somebody who does it also and understands this is what they want. This is what makes them come back. This is what makes them happy. So it's
Yeah.
appreciated.
Thank you. My staff gets annoyed at me, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
we've got I can't take the credit either. We've got an incredible team behind me that.
Yeah, but you had
just,
quite a dream that they trust you to just get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so do you have a favorite song that you've written?
No, I have favorites.
Yeah.
Some that have been recorded and some that have not. No, I don't have a favorite song in general that I didn't write, and I don't have a favorite one that I did write. Yeah. That's too hard.
Yeah.
I wrote one a couple weeks ago with Cooper, and it's like now up there probably in my top 10.
Really?
Yeah. So you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forever changing.
Yeah.
What about a story of, you talked about the river was like a 2 hour ride. Are most of your rides pretty quick like that? Or do you have some that, you have to go back to multiple times?
I'm not a big going back to person.
Okay.
I like to complete it the day of.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it takes 4 hours, sometimes it takes 6 hours, sometimes 3, whatever. I'm not a I don't know what you call it, like tinkerer.
Yeah.
Sometimes I am. Sometimes I'll be listening to it and going, can we just try to tweak this? Absolutely. But for the most part, I really don't want to leave the room until it's complete.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. I mean, if somebody else's way is to go back and back and back, whatever works, whatever makes the end of the song great. Hugh Presswood, who's a tremendous writer, he wrote the song "Remembers When" and some incredible songs. He was huge, writer in the early '90s, and he wrote them all by himself. And it would take him, he would say, about a month to tinker and tinker and tinker and get the song perfect. And Gary Burr and I always laugh. Whereas we write them by the pound. We just write them faster. But his won awards, so and so do mine. So who's to say what's right or wrong?
Right. Yeah.
I'm not big on tinkering.
Yeah.
And I'm also a stickler for what is in the room remains on the song. I don't, an artist.
What's that mean?
Meaning every note counts. So don't go changing melodies and stuff during demos. I know I can be annoying. Gary Burr and I are both very particular about every single note. It should all be fabulous.
Yeah.
No throwaway notes, no throwaway words, So I don't like, well, I'll figure it out. No. Let's figure it out here and now. Because I want to walk out and know that we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Have you had any songs that that have started to go the other way, and when an artist or a demo is getting cut, or do you typically are you part of that process?
No, I mean both. Let me think. I know I've had that happen with some things where I'm like, why did they change the melody like that? Or once in a while they'll change it just because that's what's in their head. If it's not too big of it, and I'll be like, okay. I mean, they cut it that way. I'm trying to think though. I'm sure that's happened, but I can't tell it to you right now because if I'm in the demo session, I'm usually kind of like, I'll compromise at times, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's worked.
Yeah. Well, because I just think melodies are everything's important. And with lyrics, if you wouldn't, for the most part, you can be psychedelic in some ways, but for country music especially, if you wouldn't say it that way, don't write it that way. You would never say, I can't even think. But some of the oldest cliches, you don't talk like that. So just how do you talk?
Yeah.
Forget the rhyme that we're going for right now. How would you say it? And then we'll figure it out.
Yeah. That's great advice. It's, I mean, it's a conversation with a melody.
Yes, exactly. And what I usually do, either I do it or I'll tell my co-writer to, now read them out loud. Read it down. It should read like a dialogue. If it doesn't sound like something somebody would say, let's take it out. You know?
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So now that you've been doing both, do you like to write more or do you like to produce more?
I like to write more.
I knew that was going to be the answer. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think producing is an outlet, and it's important, and I have a talent for it. It's not my happiest place. You know what I mean? The happy place is creating the song, but it's always. But also, I mean, there's certain producing experiences where it is like a recipe. A little more of this, a little more of that, sprinkle it here. Oh, we need some, now we need some oil, we need some salt, we need some pepper. It's really like that, it's mixing a good recipe. But without a great song doesn't mean, can you cuss on the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, without a good song doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
You can polish it up, but at the end of the day, it's still not a strong song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what, I don't know if we should go here or not, but what do you think about the songs that are out on radio right now?
I love them.
Do you?
Yeah, I get asked this all the time. And I do have friends that just bitch and moan about this new country stuff. And I thought, when I wrote I Love the Way You Love Me, I got such slack from the older, like they thought it was a pop song, and now it's the most quaint little song. things have to evolve. My influence was rock and pop and stuff. So of course, I Love the Way You Love Me has a lot of that influence.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't begrudge anything that's happening now. And there are songs that will be around forever from this era. And there'll be songs that we don't remember, just like from the 90s. The great ones will rise. But I don't put it down. I like a lot of it. I didn't like all of it in the 90s. You know what I mean? There are a lot of songs that I would turn the station myself. So I feel that way. But there's a lot of great artists and really solid songs. I mean, we were just talking before this started. I Drive Your Truck. What a fabulous song. You know, there's just fabulous songs and fun songs. So I actually like what's going on.
Yeah.
I think I will say there may be not as many different artists singing them. Some of these songs are so good they could be interchangeable with any artist. And back maybe a little while ago, it really was, oh, that's such a Tracy Lawrence song. That's such a Garth song. That's such a Tim McGraw song. And they really wouldn't have swapped it out. I couldn't see them singing the other person's songs. Sometimes now I think, whoa, that's a great song. I don't even know who's actually singing that. I can't tell. But I'm sure they felt the same way back, in the 90s.
Sure.
But there's some great music coming out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's you said it. You have to evolve with the times.
Yes.
And it's like, and I have been guilty of like when there's been some massive changes and like some new songs that have come out that have just been like really pushing the limits.
Wait till you hear Cooper Allen's new song.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I there's been times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't I didn't get it at first, and then it's the song that I find myself singing in the shower, and I'm like, oh man, that's
and you know what the thing is? This Cooper Allen song coming out, it's called "This Ain't Country," but it is country, but it's freaking in your face. It's so good, and it has so much rock element and country element, and you name it. I love it. When he turned it in, when he showed it to me, I was like, I'm so in love with this song. It's so in your face. However, even as things go a little bit all the way to another side, that's when it always ends up moving back towards a little bit more traditional. It goes in cycles, don't you find?
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's getting a little crazy, and then Chris Stapleton comes along, or whoever. It always goes around and around. And with this newer generation, whatever, like I said, I was raised on rock and pop. They're raised on hip hop and country.
Yep.
Why can't they fuse it? Why can't? And Cooper Allen, his biggest influences were like 90s, like Weezer and Kid Rock and Bare Naked Ladies. Why can't he infuse that with his beautiful knowledge and love of country music?
Yeah.
What's so bad?
I mean, it's natural. Right?
It's natural.
Whatever you grow up listening to. I mean, it was the same thing for me. I was Skid Row and Poison.
There you go.
It was like I was rock and roll, and it was honestly, it was Garth that came out that I was like, this dude's got a big belt buckle and a 10-gallon hat, but I freaking love it.
Yeah,
he's Billy Joel. I mean, it was like,
and he runs around the arena like any of those bands.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's funny, even though all those bands that Guns N' Roses and all that stuff, if you strip those songs down, they're still you could make them a country song.
Exactly.
Because it has to do with the format and the quality of the song.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, what knowing what you know now, I love to kind of dig in, like, what kind of advice you would give. So, like, first let's just talk about the industry now and like how much that's changed. So if someone were coming, and like wanted to get into this business as a writer or an artist, what's the advice that you would give them?
It's tough now because it's tough and it's exciting actually. Well, the same advice has gone forever with me. It's like, if you have an either or, like, I either want to, because people would come up to me all the time and go, I've been in this town for 2 years, and if it doesn't happen in the next year, I'm either going to stay here or I'm going to go back to school or I'm going to go back to working at the blah, blah, blah. I always say, do the or, because like I said, people like myself, Cooper, all these people, it's do or die.
Yep.
So if you feel that this might not be the thing for you, then do it on the weekends. Be a surgeon and have a band. I know like prominent surgeons who have really successful cover bands on the weekends and make a lot of money because they have that out and are great musicians, but they didn't want to stick it out and starve. because there's
Yeah.
a lot of starving going on, years before
Yeah.
you might make it. And you have to do this knowing that you might not. And if you end up playing in the bars all your life, to me, that's still an honor. You're still making money with your music.
Yeah.
But I think the advice I would give, as far as songwriting would be write with everybody. Even if you think you want to be a solo writer, have the experience of co-writing, because you'll learn something. You learn so much. Be open. Don't think that you're always right, and try to write with people who, if you can, that just challenge you a little. Don't go coming into this town also thinking that you're going to be able to write with hit songwriters. I understand now why I got turned down so often by people that I would come up to at the Bluebird or somebody and asked if they would write, and they would politely, some not so politely, go, no. I understand. It's not because they want to hurt my feelings. It's because they're busy. If I wrote with everybody who asked me to write just out of politeness, I wouldn't have a chance to write with the people that I create with.
Yeah.
So find those talented people on your level. Garth didn't have a deal when I met him. Gary Burr, all these people were new in this town. Find your class.
Yep.
And really work, play out, and take criticism. So important. Because if you can't, then you'll never grow.
Yep. Yep. Great advice. So it may be around the same thing, but I always like to end with advice for yourself. So if you're talking to 8-year-old Vic, knowing what you know now and everything you have gone through, what advice would you give yourself back then?
Oh, there's too many answers for that. But I will say be smarter with your money, because this business is so crazy. And once they start throwing money at you, you think it's never stopping. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. I don't care if you're a superstar. I mean, only that 1% of a percent, Other than that, it's like the money comes, the money goes, the money comes back, the money goes, the money goes, the money goes, the money comes back. So I think I would have just said, be smarter with your money, because I did not understand all of that. Most people think it's never ending. And Vic, be smarter with your money. Start that piggy bank now.
Yeah.
And professionally, I don't know, because if I had told her anything different, I don't know if I would have ended up where I am, Oh, I know what I would have told myself. Concentrate more on piano. I'm a capable piano player, but I'm not a great
Come
piano.
on.
No,
You're
no,
more
no.
than capable.
I'm a capable piano player, enough to play in bars and, when I used to make a living, and I don't play, but that's what I would have told myself. Just concentrate on being a greater piano player. Stick with that, because once I found out I could sing and play, then I wasn't really that interested in learning anymore.
Yeah.
So I would like to be a great musician, which will only help you in writing.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I look at you. That's the other thing that I think is cool about you, is you love to play. Like you, we got to do the PBS show that you did here, and you had amazing guests for that. But you have this glow about you when you're on stage behind that keyboard and you're singing. And
Oh,
it's like,
thank you.
but I look at that and go, you're so talented.
You're really sweet. Because I got to tell you something. I love doing that TV show. But my biggest anxiety is having to play, because I just wish I played better.
Yeah.
But I love singing, and I like entertaining, and I like having a party like that. But I'm always like, I got cheat notes. I'm looking at the thing. So I look at other piano player friends of mine. I'm like, oh, I want to play like that. But that's okay. It hasn't really hurt me too much, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, great. Anything else? Anything else?
This
you
was
want to
so
put out there?
fun, and as you can tell, I like to talk. So no, this was great. Any other advice? Don't go chasing what you think is trending, because you'll never find it. You'll never catch it.
Yeah.
By the time you catch it, there's another trend happening. So just write what's real and what feels right. That's probably it. Don't try to chase a trend, because it's not sincere, and it's not going to help you.
So good.
Yeah.
I love it. It's always a pleasure to get to see you and hang out.
Really fun, Chris.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's just
Can we do a part 2 sometime?
Yes. I was just gonna say, like, I know, like, there's so many stories that I know about you, and we could do this for 3 hours.
Yes.
And still be peeling back layers.
We could. Can I actually? can I plug my TV show?
Yes,
I just
yes.
realized that if you want to watch Victoria Shaw or Songwriters Under the Covers, just download the All Arts app anywhere and then watch it. There's there's 2 seasons. There's 14 episodes.
Yeah.
So please.
In that second season, we did.
All Here.
Yeah, All Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jimmy Allen was here, and Garth, and Tommy Shaw of Styx, and
Yep.
Clint Black. It was Keb Mo. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a great time. It was awesome.
I hope people watch it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Victoria Shaw, and we'll see you next time. This has been an episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information after the show, head over to chrisblair.com. That's where you can find information on these episodes, trailer notes, video links, all kinds of great stuff. Also, make sure to leave us a great rating on iTunes, like and follow us on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. I really hope that you think this show is awesome, and we really appreciate the love and support. I promise to keep gathering great content and continuing to sit down with more amazing songwriters and artists as we grow. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for the support. We'll see you next time.